This week on To the Contrary, up first, a financial revolution for the so-called vanishing middle class being launched by women in Congress. Behind the headlines, the impact of legal and illegal immigrants on the nation's health care system and how that affects American families. Welcome to the Contrary, a discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Up first, women in power reach out to the middle class. This week's freshman orientation on Capitol Hill included a first-ever meeting for the 16 women now in the U.S. Senate, or at least most of them. And for newly elected Democrats, the focus was on how to fulfill their promise to bolster the economic plight of the so-called vanishing middle class. Census data show more than half of voters with household incomes up to $150,000 per year voted the Democratic ticket. We asked Senator-elect Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota what she and other senators plan to do to help the voters who put them in office.
In Minnesota, people are really concerned about how Washington's been tilting the playing field against the middle class. And so what I'm very interested in, my state is very interested in, is doing things to help people pay for college with tuition, student loans, helping make health care more affordable, including negotiating with the drug companies for prescription drugs for Medicare Part D, doing something about energy independence.
Government figures show inflation crippled middle-class budgets, with college tuition up 53%, health care up 29%, transportation costs up 16%. Hourly earnings only rose by 19%. Democrats promise a vote on raising the minimum wage and adjusting the alternative minimum tax.
Focusing on the family as well as focusing on the important national issues and helping those who are middle class stay there or do better, and those who aren't middle class having an opportunity ladder to get there.
So, Congresswoman Norton, are the women in Congress more focused on the middle class now?
Bonnie, she who rocks the cradle also tends to the family budget and wonders if she is still in the middle class.
Women tend to consider the broader policy implications of their votes, including how it impacts elderly, children, and workers, all of whom predominantly populate the middle class.
Yes, they are, and it's really time for the middle class to come back into focus, but I know that they're not going to ignore those who've been left behind.
Women members of Congress are going to be focused on the same thing as their male counterparts, and that really is, what do their constituents want?
Well, according to a lot of them, what their constituents want is more of a focus on the middle class, and I think a lot of voters, is there a shift here that we're seeing among the Democrats, for example, because Democrats have focused on the poor more recently than this big new emphasis I sense from having spent some time up on Capitol Hill this week on the middle class?
Well, with the points that the Democrats have gained on security, the Democrats feel free now to go straight to the issues of the poor and the middle class, because that's really the only thing they had against us. Guess who they are? And now that the Iraq War has in fact leavened the issue of security, we're back to being the big tent party we were under FDR, where you had very conservative Democrats and you had very liberal Democrats, and with that kind of base, of course, you can take the country. That's what we're going to do in 2008.
Now, the issues that affect the poor are different from the issues that affect the middle class. I think what you said is very important, because you have had this idea that the Republicans only stand for the rich. I think that's an unfair slight, a very effective soundbite, but an unfair slight. But then it is true that the Democrats have traditionally been thinking about the poor, whereas 85% of the country believes or is part of the middle class. Let's make very clear that those tax cuts from 5 years ago did help many middle-class families. It's always said that this only went to the top 1% of the gazillionaires. That helped many small business owners decide that they had enough capital and enough confidence to venture out on their own outside the traditional workforce. I think the alternative minimum tax is definitely going to get a once-over or twice-over by the United States Senate, and that would be very important for the middle class. But generally, I think the whole tone will be changed, if not the entire channel will be changed, away from just talk of Iraq and on to kitchen table economics.
But also, you know, I don't think that the Democrats scored points on the Iraq War. I think ineffective leadership is really what scored points here. And, you know, we have known for a long...
Or lost points.
or lost points. You know, we have known for a long time that there were other things that were on people's plates and on people's agendas. And I think we need to, you know, when we talk about who won and why people won, we got to remember that these districts are not cookie-cutter Democratic.
Lower class. Are women in Congress doing this because they are more maternal, or to get to where they are, do they have to be higher testosterone women than your average mother?
I don't think that you have to be maternal to care about kitchen table economic issues. I think that you have to be sensible and political, and with 85–90% of people in the country considering themselves middle class, that's the vast bulk of the electorate. Even you ask somebody making $200,000 a year, they'll tell you they're upper middle class.
You know, and that's
if they live in New York City or Los Angeles or San Francisco, where real estate is out of sight, isn't it true that they are upper middle class?
And at the same time, the Democrats are very, very committed to increasing the minimum wage. And frankly, anybody who's making $5.15 an hour is not really in the middle class if they're supporting any family at all.
But see, the minimum wage, and I've got to respond to Kellyanne's point about the tax cuts helping the middle class. Sure, some of that went to the middle class and people got employed. And you got to ask yourself, so why aren't we all happy? We aren't happy because some of the figures you showed in the beginning of this clip. You got a kid going to college, and by the way, millions don't think they can go now even to the state university because the cost of college tuition has gone up 53%. If you've been priced out of the city where you grew up because your wages have not kept up with, in any respect, with the cost of living, and if you've seen huge tax cuts go disproportionately, and that you cannot deny.
All right, but let me
the very top of the income level.
Let's get to.
Then you wonder, where is the middle class?
Let's get to helping middle class mothers and fathers send their kids to college. Okay, the Democratic response, I talked to Senator-elect Klobuchar about this, is to cut the interest rate, as opposed to, why not cutting tuition? I mean, if the tuition is $10,000 a year but I'm just doing something. Doing something more. What I'm saying is doing something more impactful than cutting the interest rate on loans. Yes, that will help, but will it really help enough to get a lot of people to college who couldn't afford it without that?
Let me tell you why I think it will. There are two ways in which we can be helpful. Pell Grants, which help lower, middle, and poor people go to college, have in fact not gone up since these people came to power. Two, the middle class is helped because of the way in college education, because of the way we finance college education. It's no longer financed by simply the parents paying the tuition. Students and parents self-finance the education through college loans, and the Republicans have not done what could easily have been done. Instead, they had some patrons who did not want them to cut interest rates.
People in this country save no money. We save no money, and we do nothing to help our children get to college. We have 18 years to save, Eleanor. We save less than 0.5% of our income. In Germany, it's more than 11% of our income.
What have you all done about that?
No. What do you mean you all? It's not. This is not a partisan issue so much as this country doesn't know how to say no to their kids when their kids want gadgets when they're 9 and 10. Give them one gadget, put the rest of the darn money in for the college tuition. They buy these parents buy 3 lattes a day for $5 a pop. Don't deny themselves a thing, and then they say that the government or the Republicans or the man on the moon should help send their kids to college.
All right, but speaking of denying themselves a thing, I've got to move on to the next topic. Thank you, Kim Gandy, for joining the panel for this part of the program. Behind the headlines, immigration and health care. Congress and President Bush never did complete work on an immigration reform package and may take up that tough issue again next year. We, meanwhile, in a 3-part series, are taking an in-depth look at 3 aspects of the impact of immigration on American families, on American wages, on America's health care system, and on the environment. In our second segment, we examine the impact on health care. Avon Park, Florida. Population 8,900. It's located in the central part of the